Hello, everybody, and happy Nun Day. It's Nun Day. How do you like that? I hope we have a good volume going here. I got it up all the way. Let me know if you have any problems with that. And welcome to today for Sunday, Nun Day. No makeup, no bra, no problem. That's how it works. Shoes are on. Shoes are on, you guys. So today is, Sunday, and today is a great day for reflection. Today is a day to kind of go digging into where you are. Hi, Jan from Texas. Happy Nun Day to you too, Betsy. So yeah, I'm just like, I got it going on here, or nothing going on here, really. Yeah, I'm showing up just like totally naked faced and going, well, that's it, baby. That's what you see is what you get. But Nun Day is a day that I always look at and as just kind of a day to hang out and a day to reflect, a day to be thankful, doing church, however it is that you do church, and doing a little bit of a dig into your heart to kind of see where you are, because I think this is a good time to do that. This is a great time to do that. Hi, Tracy and Gail. One of the things that I really love is I like sayings, as you know. I like quotes. I keep quotes constantly going with me, and I don't even know where my quotes are anymore. But quotes just light my fire. Quotes give me something to look at, something to appreciate, something to mull over in my mind over and over again, and it kind of helps to kind of light the path, if you will. And I'm a little consumed right now. I'm not gonna lie with all that's going on with Marla, and with all that's going on with her nephew Ben. That's a serious diagnosis and requiring a lot of prayer. But it doesn't stop us in our tracks. It needs to light us up, and it needs to help us to go forward and help us to not only send in all the good stuff, all the good prayers, the good thoughts, that, but also just to really make sure that in his journey, this next part of his journey, and hopefully as he's getting out of prison, literally, that his path is going to be well lit with the right people, the right circumstances, and the right healing to get him back up and healthful. So let's keep that in mind. And with that in mind, I wanted to talk to you today also about shame, the topic of shame, because it's an interesting one. And I'm going to dig deeper in this in our in our what group is this? The Hot Melt Diet group. We're going to talk about this coming up. Shame is a really good topic for us to really dig into, and it's going to sound a little bit contradictory here. I think it's a good topic to dig into, and I also think you can go too far and become very a little too psychoanalytical and be gazing at your navel all day long. And so I encourage a balance there, because I think there is a process of discovery, and there's also a process of allowing some of this stuff to go. So that said, this quote of the week, which is the last day we'll have this tomorrow, I'm going to have a new quote for you. Whether you think you can or think you can't, you're right. And this just shows you the power of our brains and how our brain can set us on a path of doing what it is that we would really like to have happen in our lives, or setting us on a path of not having what we want in our lives. And whatever path it is that we choose, we gather the evidence to support that. And, it's interesting to me, because I've been in a lot of groups and I've created a lot of groups, and I've seen such things such as, does anybody else feel this way? And we're creating and looking and gathering, it's a human thing, evidence to support the thing that we're feeling at the time. And I see this even in the sprint group. I see this even in the Hot Melt Diet groups. Any group that I've ever been in, somebody is inevitably going to say that. And that's because we're gathering our evidence. We're trying to either confirm or deny something. And I think that's an important thing to do, but I also think it's an important thing to look for the evidence that's going to support the very thing that you want. That's always the way to get what it is that you want in your life. And we can do that. It is a doable thing. And that's why, today I want to talk to you about shame. So if anybody in your life, that's dealing with shame, and I'm going to be talking about shame in conjunction with our body clutter, because I think there's a huge connection there. And we write about that in our book, Body Clutter. And, of course, I've written the auxiliary body clutter, where I did a little bit of an update on the nutrition. In our new book, Marla's and my new book that we're currently writing now, the Body Clutter Wise book, which is what we're naming it for right now, there will be a big update. But for right now, that's what it is. So if you want to win this book, Saving Dinner the Low Carb Way, share this video and tell somebody that you love why you're sharing this video. And do it here on Facebook, and do it in a way that I can see your comment, because on Monday I'm going to be choosing a new one, a new person. So a new person to win the book, as long as you live in the United States, because otherwise it gets super uber expensive. So let's talk about shame. Shame is a thing. Shame is something that people deal with, Shame is something that happens in our lives that creates a tendency to either want to hide, want to step out, want to pretend it doesn't exist. There is a multitude of things that happen with shame. Shame is this dark, dank thing that can either be something that's very transparently involved in your life, or something that is that's really hard, for you to see. And when we have shame attached to our body clutter, we have a tendency to not be in pictures with our family. We're the picture takers. We take the pictures. We don't show up into our family pictures, do we? We have a tendency to have behaviors that accentuate the shame and just underscore that we are shameful, For example, eating in secret. That is a shameful activity. And we shame ourselves when we do it, and yet it's something that just happens over and over again. Until you can unplug that shame-causing behavior, it's going to keep presenting itself over and over again. And we'll talk about that in just a second. But I think it's something that we need to look at, because shame can be this thinly veiled behavior that's over on the top of everything, and we don't even realize that we're bringing this, that we're living in this shame. Because like I said, we're not taking the pictures. We don't go to the pool with the kids. We don't put on bathing suits. We're making up excuses continually to hide the shame that's ever present in our lives. And if this is you, and if you feel this in your heart, and this is something that you've had to deal with before, or this is something that you're suddenly realizing, oh my goodness, I didn't even realize that that's what the attachment was, then let me know. Tell me in the comments that this is something that you're feeling. Chronic shame is something, though. Chronic shame is something that can perpetually be there. Chronic shame is something that colors everything that we do. We almost have shame-colored lenses into everything that we do. We're shamed when we go with a group of friends and we're the biggest one there, and we're shamed when we order in a restaurant. We're shamed when we're taking, like I said, taking pictures was a big one. I mean, I opted out of so many family pictures. I was looking through our family pictures and I found so many that I wasn't in. I was the picture taker because I was ashamed of myself. I was ashamed of the way I looked. And that between the shame and the guilt and all the things that go with it, that can perpetuate that same behavior unless you pull the plug on the shame machine. And the way that we pull the plug is we have to change our mind. There's a switch that gets flipped. And there's this, we've talked about flipping the switch so many times, but I believe that to live in shame is to live with a decision that shame is your companion, that you're willing to allow that to happen. And I also believe that when we understand that shame is what's conducting a lot of this behavior, and that shame is a veil, which Marla pointed out. Marla and I were texting about this today. Marla pointed out that veil is also the word evil with the letters mixed up, and that just blew my head up. Think about that. When we veil, we shroud. When we veil, we hide. When we veil, we're not seeing what the true picture is. What do you think of that? Now, some of us have had very traumatic things happen in our lives. There's been molestations. There's been all kinds of horrible things. I myself was date raped. I've shared that before, and it took a lot of years. And it was, during that whole Me Too thing, when I finally realized, I thought, the way we think about things, I thought it was my fault. And when I finally realized this wasn't my fault and this is what happened, I was overpowered, this is what happened, that's when I stopped the shaming of the incident that had happened. When I suddenly realized it wasn't my fault. Our shame switches are on for a lot of us, and it's veiled and we don't see it. It's veiled and it's hidden, and it has behind it, if you think about it, it's like a car, like a car from somebody who just got married and they've got all that junk hanging off the back. That's how our shame is. It's a shame car with all the junk hanging off the back, the old shoes and the cans and all of that. And there's things attached to that shame. But when we can start to take a look at what the shame is, and we can't, on one hand, overanalyze it because it'll make us completely bonkers, at least not with that, not by ourselves. We need trusted friends. We need a community. We need our body clutter buddy. We need that help for that part. But to dig deeper and to go into that whole thing, sometimes that shame needs to be done, that excavation of shame needs to be done with a qualified counselor. And I'm certainly not a qualified counselor on this. I'm just here to make you aware that shame could be attached to your body clutter. It was for me. It was for me. And shame can be veiled. Shame can be veiled. Learning how to deal with it, learning how to deal with that shame clutter, if you will, is part of the process of undoing all those little tiny knots. I one time had a necklace that was it was a lovely little necklace. It was hopelessly tangled up. I gave it to Marla and she untangled it for me. And I think that's such a delicious metaphor because that's sometimes how it is. Sometimes you need somebody else to help you untangle things because you can't see your way through it. And sometimes it's so intricate and you can't get past it. Your big picture analysis is all you can see, and that pain is all you can feel. So Naomi's saying, I haven't made the switch yet, and I'm not sure how. I'm hoping to help you with that right now, Naomi. But I think there's a lot of switches. Think about yourself as a house. We're called in the Bible. It says that our bodies are our temples. So in our temples, our houses, there are many rooms, and there's many switches to be flipped. It's not just one flip. There's several. And sometimes that emotional connection is one of the things that is so critical to being able to flip the switch once and for all, or at least for that particular time. Sometimes we need an illumination, a light shine on something that we had previously hidden and veiled and kept out of our lives. So either way, shame can be an overwhelming emotion. Shame can be something that just completely takes us off the path of healing. And we get to a certain point and then there's a block. There's an obstacle. We can't go past it. And so today what I want to do is talk about the conversations that we're having in our heads that are really, more than anything, if we really take a look at them and do a quick analysis, they're based on shame. And they're based on guilt. And they're based on not doing something right. So we create reasons that we're unable to do things. I believe that. We create reasons that we're unable to experience our life as in its fullness. We create reasons and maybe even find ourselves in the place of just being exasperated, with our lives. And a lot of times that has to do with the fact that we are living in this shroud of shame. And I love what Brene Brown, if you've ever listened to any of Brene Brown's stuff, I highly recommend that you do that. But Brene Brown has done, she's an author, she's written all kinds of books, and she's written specifically about shame and how shame leads us to a place of living just basically half a life. And I can't possibly be nearly as articulate as she is, but I can tell you this, that when you start to see the shame, when you start to see the fact that this has been your shroud and your veil and something that you have lived with for all of these years, there is a point where you can make a decision about that shame. And I believe one of the biggest things that you can make, one of the biggest decisions that you can make, is if it's been a secret for all these years, that you tell somebody. And that doesn't mean that you have to announce it to the world. That doesn't mean you have to, put it on Facebook or, tell a small group, but tell someone. Shame loses its power when the light is on it. You just think about that. Evil hides in the dark. A veil equals evil, as we're saying. It hides in the dark. So when we have the stuff hiding from the dark, when we have this stuff that's in a corner, that's hidden and needs excavating, if we can bring it into the light, bring it into the air, this is how we get rid of these things. This is how it suddenly becomes a lot less powerful in our lives, and it stops dictating the direction of our lives. We stop living in shame. We start living in our power instead. I wrote on my Facebook page, I decided, and I went through all of this with Mark, but when I was date raped, I remember very, very, very much so feeling very guilty about it. And I remember at the time feeling like I must be very promiscuous for this to have happened. And when all of a sudden this Me Too stuff came out, it just triggered an aha moment and shone a light on what really happened in that situation, and how I fought this guy, and how I finally gave up and just waited for it to be over on my floor in my apartment. And this was in 1980. I was 20 years old, and I was frightened. I was disgusted. I was ashamed of what had happened, because nothing like that had ever happened to me before. I was a good girl, I had done all the right things, and I didn't do that kind of stuff. And there I was on the floor of my apartment being date raped by this guy. And I lived with that for so many years, never discussed it, never talked about it, never thinking that, it counted toward all the things that had happened to me. But here is the thing that you need to know, is when that light switched on, and I was finally able to see that what happened to me was not my fault, that was out of my control, and that for me to be ashamed of that was me giving that rapist my power. You hear that? So if anything has happened to you in the past like this, and anything, I'm talking from being molested to being raped to having something awful happen to you, or the circumstances in your life, it's not your fault. Lose it now. Find the power within you to say, this is not my fault, and stand up to it. Let it go. Yeah, I am. Jan says, I'm sorry. Yeah, of course. I'm sorry that it happened to me too. I'm sorry that it happened to me, and I'm sorry that I had so many years of believing, over 30 years of believing that it was my fault. But I will tell you, the minute that I broke free from that, I broke free from it when I understood that it wasn't my fault and the shame was gone. Boom, like that. It was like a ripping open. And the anger that I felt and the crying that I went through it was absolutely cathartic, and it was clean. It was clean. And I'm using my life happily as an example to show you that you can break free from shame. Shame is something that's a decision, whether we know it or not, to carry this garbage with us and all the things that are attached with it with us through life. And attached to that oftentimes is the protective layer of our body clutter. The protective layer of keeping ourselves insulated from the harm that the world has done to us. We write about this extensively in Body Clutter. But let me just tell you, this is a peeling of the onion. It's a peeling of the onion. Look at me. I mean, 15 years later, we're back in the body clutter boat trying to, paddle away and trying to get rid of just some more body clutter that's come back. But you have to explore your own darkness. You have to explore your own shame. What is attached to that? Why are you hanging on to this shame? What is it about? Shame doesn't have to be in your life. Shame is a decision. And when you understand that, you have the decision that you can make all by yourself and say, I don't want this anymore. And cry, get rid of it, journal. Oh, you should see my journals. My journal, there were some exclamation points in there. I broke more than one pencil. I was extraordinarily upset. And I will tell you, Mark is an amazing man, and he stood by me and he said, whatever you need to do to get that out, do it, and of course I didn't take it out on him. That's ridiculous. I understood what that shame was about, but I was also a little prickly for a few weeks. And I told him that. I said, I know I'm a little prickly. I know I'm a little bit of a hair trigger right now. I know that I have anger about this. And I know that, you say something just a little bit off and I'm just going to, it happens. But, you have the ability to see this within yourself and do that. Nancy's asking, what are other things that cause shame that are not so obvious? Well, it can be anything. It could be just something that somebody said to you a long time ago that you've carried around with you. I'll give you another one in my life, Okay, well, this is a good one. I hope I don't cry. So when I was in 7th grade, between 7th and 8th grade, I had an awkward time. I was your classic ugly duckling. I went from just being a normal, adolescent kid to suddenly just shooting up. Well, no, from 7th to 6th grade, suddenly I had boobs. I never got the acne thing. I didn't get that till later, really, rosacea, right? But I was bullied. I was in 7th grade, I was scared to go into the gym. The 8th grade girls would beat up on me. They called me Muttley. And that I was a dog. And that on the way home from school sometimes, we all wore our coffee-colored eggs, nylons. Remember those pantyhose, and our white shoes? That's what we did back then. And I remember getting beat up and pushed into brick walls and them tearing away at my pantyhose and me having to explain that. And I was ashamed of the way I looked. And I was convinced that I was a real dog, a real Muttley. And it stayed with me for years and years and years. And I always, it showed up in my relationships with men. and it showed up that any man who gave me any kind of a kind word or said something nice about the way I looked or whatever, then, that was boyfriend material. That's the only criteria I had. That was boyfriend material. So needless to say, I had a bunch of bad boyfriends. I got married a few times to some bad guys. And I believe that it had a lot to do with my shame of being bullied and all this massive insecurity that developed of what I looked like and how I showed up, and are they going to be talking about me behind my back? Shame shows up from our experiences, and we're shamed into a lot of times believing things that just aren't true. Guilt is attached to shame. Being frightened and afraid is attached to shame. Fear is attached to shame. Whatever it is, however it's presented itself in your life, however you look at it and you think about the things in your life that have held you back, there's a lot of times an attachment to shame. And I really believe that there's some energy that is leaking out in your life because there's shame attached to it. So when you're, worried about how you look all the time, that's a lot of energy that's going towards something that doesn't need to be, if that makes sense to you. So instead of putting our energy towards something constructive, we're putting our energy towards something that's negative, that's held us back in the process. Shame is something that has the ability to completely derail you and hold you back from every good thing that's out there. Shame gives you a veiled look at the blessings in your life, and you don't see them. You miss them. You miss and appreciate the good things that are happening in your life because shame is there. Yeah, the teeth thing. I mean, I had buck teeth. I begged my dad for braces. I was ashamed of my teeth. You can be ashamed of your skin. You can be ashamed of your hair. You can be ashamed of your body. You can be ashamed of all these things that have happened to you, and they do shape you for your future. But as you look at it, as you excavate the darkness, as you excavate and go digging for these things, and again, there has to be some balance in there. And sometimes if there's a lot of stuff that has brought you to this point, you need to have a counselor to help you out with that. But shame has its ability to stamp and tattoo you if you allow it to happen. And this is why I say it's so critical to be flipping that switch and to getting rid of this kind of thing. And I believe that there's a way to do it. I think there's a way to flip the switch. And I'm going to read about some of these because I've written them down about all the things. If we can clear the shame, we can change the game is the thing. There is a whole process that goes on inside of us that when we're willing to look at something and when we're willing to call things out, this is why I say keeping everything front of mind. And this includes the shame part, because the shame part usually is way tucked in the back, and it's just the deep hum that's going on 24 hours a day in our lives. But when we look at it, when we see it, and when we hear it and start calling it out, we have an opportunity to flip the switch. And that's what I'm talking about the energy of clearing this energy and putting it out this way. Brene Brown says, only when we are brave enough to explore our darkness will we discover our infinite light. And that's true for everybody. I think that's true for everyone. So one of the things that I think is really clearly important, and one of the things that I have seen because I've done a lot of workshops, I've spoken on a lot of stages and spoken, one-on-one with a lot of people. And that's about your whole physical physiology. When you stand tall and put your shoulders back and your head up with your chin up, good posture, a kind that brings a whole different physiology to your body. And if we can start holding our chins high and start talking about ourselves in the I am statements, and those I am statements are clearly there to support what it is that we want inside and less of what we don't. I am stronger than my past. I am able to break free from all the shame. I am able, I am capable, I am powerful. That one quote that I gave you so many weeks ago about being powerful versus being pitiful is a really good contrast here. And the contrast, when we live in the contrast and we can see the black versus the white, and we can see our own darkness. You are not your past is right, Allison. And I would even put this, I am living powerfully in my present. And take out the not. Take out the not. Our brains don't see not. Our brains see I ams though. So if we're exercising and flexing that, that's kind of one of the things that we want to do. And I love this one thing. Does this support the life that I'm trying to create? Does this support the life that I'm trying to create? And those actions will help to create the momentum to help with the healing process. Because the thing is, it's one thing to acknowledge this past and this stuff that happened. And I've created, I've just shared a lot of this big stuff that has happened in my life that I know has had an influence on my present day life. That I know that has been very big time a part of what my life was. Just a funny aside, I'm friends with some of these women who are now, 62 years old, and were part of that 8th grade brigade that beat me up in the gym. And I don't even think they remember that they did that to me. And every time I see them and I see their faces and I see them with their grandchildren, for heaven's sakes, all I can see is that 8th grade mean girl face of pushing me up against the lockers and putting a fist in my face and saying that, swear to God, I'm gonna kill you. You think about that. But my point is that, let's get factual now. Those are the facts. That did happen, guys. That did happen. I got beat up. I got bullied in 8th grade, in 7th grade, really bad. I was scared turning the corner every which way. And as a matter of fact, I had a great time in 8th grade. And when I was getting ready to be a freshman in high school, I thought, oh my gosh, here we go again. They're going to start beating me up again. That dread hung over my head for a whole year and change until I was a freshman in high school. And they didn't want to touch me in high school. I guess they'd grown past it. It didn't mean anything to them. And as a matter of fact, what I would be terrorized when I saw them in the hall, and they just smile and, it was like it never happened. So sometimes people's perspective, when you're the victim, you feel victimized, right? Rightfully so. And there's this shame of like, what did I do? Why did they hate me so much? Why is this? So living with this, okay, got it, right? This is what happened. The date rape thing, yep, got it. That's what happened. And you have your list of all the shame-producing things that had happened in your life. Here's the place where we flip the switch, though. We say, okay, here's my big box of experience. This is what happened. And I no longer want the influence of this big box of crap in my life. So here's what I'm going to do to flip the switch. It no longer has an influence on my life. So I am living powerfully in the present. I am living a life that is powerful. I am living a life that's creative, that's strong, and that's functional and beyond anything I've ever experienced in my life. Beyond anything I've ever experienced in my life. And the reason I'm saying this is if we can get past all of these things, which we can if we flip that switch and make that decision, then we can live powerfully in our present because we're looking now at the facts. Okay, facts are facts. unplug the emotion that went with them. Deal with it. Cry, scream, do whatever you need to do. Write and put it in your journal. And if there's a new layer of stuff coming up, then talk to somebody about it. But don't live in it. Don't choose a victim's path. When you choose a victim's path, you're giving shame. You're giving shame the glory. Think about that. When you let go of the shame and say, I'm not living in that shame anymore. I'm showing up in the pictures. I'm showing up in my life. I am showing up over here. If there's somebody who's causing whatever it is in your life and you live with this perpetual shame, that needs to be addressed and needs to be talked about. And you have the power to do that. You are not a tree. You don't have to stay where you are ever. I don't care what it is. You need to support everything that you're doing. This is how you support the life that you want to create for yourself. That's what it is. You're going to have to do that. When you can start doing this and you can start calling out what it is, this is what happened, and this is my big box of shame of things that happened in my life. And then you go to the next part and say, okay, so I'm unplugging all the emotion from that. I've dealt with that. I've cried. I've done this. I've cried. I've realized this. And I don't need to do this over and over again. Because that, my friends, is the definition of insanity. You don't need to relive it over and over again. So when the reliving stuff comes, when the stuff comes piling down on your head, when the stuff comes that you're starting to feel this way and going, oh yes, but I remember the time that I was date raped and this, that, and the other thing, and that guy and his face and this and his breath. And I mean, I can go through that. That's reliving it again. That's doing it again. No, you know what you do? Instead, you unplug it. You unplug the emotion that goes with it. And you say, no, I'm not doing that. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to think about that guy right now. That guy is a thug. He is a thoughtless, horrible human being. And right now, what's happening to him is that God is dealing with him. God is dealing with him. I don't need to do that anymore. That's God's job. Okay, take this off. Burden done. Here comes the shame. There it goes. I'm done. We don't need to live in the shame. We don't need to live in the shame. We don't have to put on the mantle of victimhood anymore. Pull it out. Stop it. Because you're a powerful woman. You're here for a purpose. Your experiences, as horrible as they might have been, with all the shame, with all the guilt, with all the things, can also be the fuel and the momentum for you to say never again. And I'm going to walk powerfully, and I'm going to walk away from the shame. You can do that. That to me is the stuff that makes my skin tingle. It gives me goosebumps. I can walk away from that. The only time I ever mention this is to say this is something that you need to hear. But do I think about this anymore? Absolutely, 100% not. No. You know why? I am not going to live in a victim's place. I'm not going to live with victimhood as my mantle. I am not. I am the queen of my own life. I am not giving that crown up for that jackass who tried to destroy me. No. Or those 8th grade girls who scared the living hell out of me. And I lived in fear for 2 years. You don't have to live in fear. You don't have to give your power to these people. You take it back, sister, right now. You take it back. And if you plan on taking it back right now, I want to see your hand up in the air. Show me a hand and show me that you're going to take it back. And we're going to talk about how to do that. Your habits, your day-to-day habits, and the promises you tell yourself and the things that you do in order to create positive momentum in your life are the things that will help you to take back your power. They are the things that are going to create that layer by layer victory. This is how it is. Up here, way up here, is where you have this goal that you have, this vision that you have for yourself. And down here is all the swirling stuff, of things that could come in and put themselves in there as an obstacle. Say, well, what about this? And what about this shameful thing? And what about this shameful thing? All of those things can have a way of coming in. You don't even realize it. You don't hear it. But guess what? If you're aware that these things can come in, you can start unplugging them one little tiny plug at a time, one plug at a time. Nope, I'm not going to give you power. It's an energy thing. Where your energy goes, that is where your momentum comes from. It's a physics thing, you guys. The more powerfully you live, this is why I love the sprint, This gives you a power. This is like the jumping off place. Look at all the things that you have done, right? I love watching everybody create this amazing momentum in their lives. But your amazing momentum in your life can be unplugged anytime when you start in the old pattern of the shame. The shame quota only is part of your life if you give it energy. That's why you can't relive things over and over again. That's why you need to shut those things up, put them in the box of experience, put them in the box of, okay, the shame can all go here, and get really matter of fact about it. And plug into a physiology that stands tall, that stands proud of herself, that says, I am powerful, that gets into the pictures with the family, that goes and gets a pretty new bra. I've told you my nursing bra story over and over again. That goes and gets the clothes in the size that they can fit now. That doesn't put off celebrating who you are today because you're not quite there to the vision yet. You deserve to be celebrated right now today. You might have lost 10 pounds or 5 pounds or 1 pound or none pounds. Who cares? You're a woman who needs celebrating today. And you're a woman who needs to understand and enjoy and capture and take back the power that you have for your life. And that power you have for your life is the minute you say to that shame, you no longer have power in my life. It's not it. And do the opposite of what shame led you to do. If shame led you to hide, then come out of hiding. If shame made you quiet and silent, then start speaking up, sister. If shame made you cry in secret and just keep reliving it, then make a decision today. You're not going to cry in secret. You're not going to relive this anymore. And then you're going to go find somebody to talk to, whether it's a counselor or it's a body clutter buddy or whatever. But you're not doing this anymore. And start doing all the things and keep the promises that you need to keep for yourself. For yourself. You need to take your life and configure it the way you want to. You know how you buy a new computer and you have to configure it? You've got to put in the Word doc, the Office or whatever. You've got to put the CD in. This is the older times. I mean, now I guess it's so much different. But the point is, it's a brand new computer. It needs configuring. It needs to have the things in it that you need. That's what you need to do. Reconfigure this brand new computer of yours. Reconfigure this brain of yours. As these things come up, and they will, journal about them, get them out, and figure out when enough is enough. Figure out. Because it's okay, and there are layers, and there are things that come out, and that's part of the peeling of the onion. But at some point, there is a thing inside of you, and look for it, that says that is enough, no more. And I'm going to be factual, I'm going to be strategic, and I'm going to go forward in the things that I know that I need to do. So when you clear the shame, you change the game. That goes for your body clutter, whether it's you're sitting on it or what's inside of your head. And it goes for your entire life. It's all connected. There is this huge connection there. And the momentum that you need in your life is all going to be based on the promises that you make yourself and following through on them. And no, you can't beat yourself up. You're not going to be perfect and all of that. But the more that you are on it, doing the little things, drinking your water, doing, the sprint, doing the things that are supporting the healthy life you want, creating the life that you want, the more the shame fades. And it fades and it goes into the background. And the more you can concentrate and you've made more room in your head for thinking about the things that you want in your life. And that is how we get out of the shame game and get into the life that we want to create. That's what I know from my own personal experience. I'm not a counselor or anything, but I have lived with shame, and I've lived with this background noise of shame that I didn't even realize what it was. And that's why I'm saying this to you, is when you start to plug into these things and start to see them for what they are, then you can unplug them too and put shame in its proper perspective and let it be just something that happened in the past, an experience. It's never going to be just, hey, so it was date rape, cool. It's never going to be that. But it's never going to have the power over you that maybe it has today. Think about that. Where you get your power from is from the confidence that you get from being courageous enough to do the work that you need to do. Build these things into your morning and your evening routines, the things that you need to do for yourself. Create that kind of momentum in your life that's based on the positive things. You can do that. And you can dismiss shame once and for all. Shame doesn't have to have power over you. Ever again. Ever again. All right, that's enough of that. So, happy Nun Day. No makeup, no bra, no problem. I hope you have a wonderful week and the rest of your weekend, and I will see you tomorrow. Thanks for joining me today.